This week on London Real, we have the movement artist and teacher, Ido Portal.
Principles much higher than technique. They produce techniques instantly. Yeah, so movement is not to be captured. You try to hug it, it disappears. Dancer, BJJ guy, they share so many similarities, but they don't realize, so they sit in separate tables. What is the prerequisite to attending an event or coming to learn? And one of my students came up with owning a body.
You told me last time, when you find a good teacher, then you should just learn from them, regardless of what they have to teach you.
I want wisdom. I want something else. You know, data, information, knowledge, wisdom.
London Real presents Ido Portal, Move or Die.
If you're going to be competitive, you're going to pay a price.
London Real Academy. Build the best you.
When I go in and look at a person or a business, I want to hear him talk about his dreams.
Am I living in alignment to the way I want to be living? And there's a feeling you get if you're not.
A community of action-oriented people that will keep you accountable to your goals. Sign up now for a free 30-day trial. London Real, sponsored by Bulletproof. Every now and then on London Real, I get to meet someone who's truly special. Someone who really causes a paradigm shift in the way I look at life. And this week, that man is Ido Portal. And he is a movement expert and teacher from Israel. I had the pleasure of meeting him a year ago, but after I filmed this episode, I spent 2 days with him at one of his movement experiences in London, and I was crawling around the floor like a lizard. I was ripping my skin open on the rings. I was at one point walking around a room with 60 people in silence, and then we engaged in almost a silent fighting art with each other. And it was one of the strangest experiences I've ever had where I communicated with someone through my body and my body language. And it was something amazing and quite beautiful about it. And come Monday morning, I started looking at everything I was doing very differently. Why do I go to the gym and lift weights? Why do I punch the heavy bag in the same way? And it was almost like having a mild psychedelic awakening. And I messaged Ido and said, you know, I think I'm starting to get it. Because Ido has developed or devoted his entire life to the study of movement. And if you're expecting the next hour and a half, 2 hours to be an explanation in detail of Ido's method, then you've come to the wrong place. Because Ido doesn't really break it down for it like that. He makes you work for it. He makes you research and really try things out for yourself in order to learn. And that's the way he teaches. And so if you're going to watch this, this is probably just the beginning of your journey when it comes to this piece. But I believe Ido is a special man. I hope he's going to be in my life for years to come. I have a lot to learn from him, and hopefully I can teach him a few things as well. So please sit back and relax and enjoy this episode. It's definitely one of my favorite, and hopefully just one in a series that I will tape with Ido over the years. And if you want even a little bit extra on top of this episode, come on over to the Academy. That's the London Real Academy, where we really have the essence of all of our premium content and our network of hardcore London Reelers. Included there is the Success Secrets from Ido, which is a clip only for our premium users. And also we have a whole social network that goes around the world. We just had a meetup in the studio with about 25 people, and the energy is absolutely amazing. We're all there making each other accountable and really trying to take ourselves to the next level. So come check that out. It is my passion. It is what I do these days. And it is really the essence of what we do on this show. So I hope to see you there. And now I will leave you with a very unique man indeed, and one to watch, and that is Mr. Ido Portal. London Real Set Design by Timothy Olton. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Ido Portal, who is a movement teacher from Haifa, Israel, who has studied capoeira, martial arts, gymnastics, yoga, circus, dance, and more in a pursuit of a movement culture that represents a paradigm shift in physicality, moving us away from culprits in movements like fitness, as well as from the separation between health, aesthetics, performance, and art. You have a worldwide following. You are here in the UK to teach a 2-day movement experience this weekend, which I'll be attending. Very excited about that. Millions of people have watched your videos on YouTube, showing your movement, describing your philosophy, and hundreds of thousands have watched us talk last time you were here on the show. Ido, welcome back to London Real.
Thank you. Very good to be here.
It's nice to have you here. My girlfriend reminded me recently that I think I had an interview after our episode last year, and someone asked me if there was one guest on your show that you'd have to spend the rest of your life with on an island, who would it be? And I forgot what I said, but apparently it was you. So
wow. I'm honored, man. You've had some amazing people here, so that speaks volumes, I think.
You know, it's great to have you back, and it's fascinating for me to always see kind of where you are, and I think probably a lot's changed with you in the last year. But I was wondering, you know, you travel all around the world. I know you've been to China, you go to Australia, the US, Europe, and I'm curious, when you're on the plane and there's that person sitting next to you, and after a few minutes they turn to you and say, you know, what do you do? What do you usually reply?
I directly say, I talk about movement. Yeah, I start with the explaining because it's going to take a while, so I just started as soon as possible. And that, of course, pulls some other questions and, you know, requests for titles and definitions that are maybe more comprehensible. And that starts the conversation, yeah. And from there, you can describe a little bit, yeah.
You said last time we were here, you said from the outside, it's hard to tell what we're doing. And I remember you talking about one of the seminars you were going to do that weekend and how people come in thinking they're going to learn one thing and they come away with something else. And I was just wondering, from the outside, from what I see, what is it that you're doing?
Yeah, so we are, I'm in the business of taking certain terminologies and pulling them out of specialized fields and teaching people from other fields and other areas to use those terminologies and to belong or to associate or sometimes to de-associate from certain things. Since the movement umbrella is so big and it's relevant to anyone, you know, so sometimes people ask us, well, what is the prerequisite to attending an event or coming to learn? And one of my students came up with owning a body. So it's so relevant for everyone. It's more about teaching people why it's relevant for them as well, and less trying to find out whether it's relevant or not. It's always relevant. As long as you live in a body, you should be occupied with movement to a certain extent. And if you're not, it's going to come up on its own, like other things in our lives. But movement and the body is pretty big.
You said you went out searching to learn about movement when you were younger, and you found out that they weren't actually teaching you about movement, they were teaching you disciplines. And I was wondering what you meant by that.
Hey, it's a bit tricky. They were teaching me movement, but they were not teaching me the movement. Yeah, they were teaching me movement through disciplinary point of view and isolated, specific ways to look at certain movements. But nobody was talking in general terms. Now class is over and you find yourself still in a body but without any instruction, without any understanding of where to take how do I take this into my life. Okay, I'm doing a capoeira class, I'm doing a BJJ class, I'm doing some track and field, or I play basketball, but I don't stop being a mover and a human being, and I don't stop being in a body when class is over, when the practice is over, when the game is over. So the movement approach is talking about that layer.
Because you were pure capoeira for 15 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not only that I was pure, I was the known for the purity, the pure of the pure. You know, my nickname was the missionary. I was the one, you know, promoting the religion of capoeira. I was the most radical one inside the club of radicals. So I wanted more, and it was first just different, some different aspects. I want, you know, to climb a wall, to go to the rock climbing wall. I want to experience with touching the floor with my knees. I spent 15 years of my life avoiding touching my knees to the floor or touching my butt to the floor. It was like almost painful experience, because it means you fell down. In capoeira, you dirty your clothes, you fell down. You don't touch these areas to the floor. And it's a taboo. So yeah, it was just like, I need these different things. And then I started to dive into all of these things. And first, I just allowed myself to do that together with capoeira, and started to bring in all these knowledge and ideas and understandings and try to inject them back into capoeira to promote and contribute to this amazing world that I believed was one of the best, you know, realities to experience and to practice in the best tribes and families. But little by little, it was just, like I said, it was too much. It could not contain it. The container was too small for this amount of ideas and information, and liquid was spilling out. And then I fought for a while with that until I realized I need a different container. And this container, it contains capoeira in itself, and that's why I don't feel I ever left it in many ways. I just, you know, it's a little bit like saying, yeah, you're not, now you're human, you're not capoeira anymore. No, it's a bigger container. I was always human. I was always moving. I just did it I loved capoeira and I experienced that, but there is more that I love to do. And it does not take away from capoeira. It does not stop that practice and many other practices.
And so what was next in your journey of movement or movement exploration?
Yeah, in the beginning it was a lot of research into weightlifting and strength work to start to try to produce tools, better tools for developing capoeiristas. Myself and my students, I had hundreds of students. And I was the first one to basically take a kind of a box, a fitness kind of box, and combine it with the Capoeira Academy. It's still rare. It's still revolutionary in many ways around the world to do such a thing. And I was like doing cross training. My students were sprinting and doing weightlifting, you know, Olympic weightlifting and gymnastics work. And that started research into gymnastics, and that started research into yoga and into awareness and into ballet and into dance and improvisation and
Okay.
it just like...
When did you realize, okay, this is an Ido Portal movement? When did you realize, okay, this is something, and my name is going to be on there? Like you said, either way, it was going to be your name. And when did you realize that this is something that is me?
Actually, I did not realize it completely. It happened to me. I always talked about movement. And I remember vividly, like the early years where I was just like constantly saying, you know, anti-commercial, like just saying, we're doing just movement. And I actually kept doing that until today. But my students started to ask, what are you doing? To each other, asking each other, like, what are we doing? What is that? And people started to say, yeah, we're doing movement. And then what kind of movement? What is that? It's Ido's stuff. And then I said, okay, maybe it's the least of the worst. Maybe it's better to put some name on it, to tag it, but still maintain the purity of the movement approach and call it movement practice versus calling it in some new name. And that's what happened. And just people made the choice for me. Eventually, they started to say Ido Portal method, Ido Portal movement method, Ido Portal movement practice. And even then, they started to use the word method. I was not completely satisfied with that, because a method is just one small thing inside of it. The perspective is more powerful. And it's a movement perspective. And later, a movement culture that gathered around it. The method is just serving that bigger thing.
Is part of you hesitant to describe the movement in words because it's changing all the time? Or do you feel like if you write it all down in words of what we are, then you can't actually be what it is?
Words are not a good container for these ideas. Yeah, I'm not hesitant. I'm reluctant. It's not good enough. Movement is a cloud, and it's something that you cannot find its limit. It's a fog floating around, and it's not something that we can define so easily. What I do is I use what I call my slice and dice approach. I slice it and I dice it through multiple perspectives until I get the most tiny piece out of this slicing and dicing that I can observe and look at. But even that, of course, misses the point. It's just an attempt to map the cloud somehow, a little bit, to know something about it. Yeah, words are problematic. And like I said, we change words, we abuse them. If you're going to use movement for something else and you have a huge following, you abused my word.
Yeah.
And now I have to change my word because I don't want to be connected to that. So look at what happens to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Yeah, all of a sudden there was a separation there. Machado Jiu-Jitsu, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. They didn't want to belong anymore just under this big title of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. People took their word, which they in the beginning used, and abused it in their eyes or used it in other eyes. Yeah, so movement is not to be captured. You try to hug it, it disappears. You look at it you're zooming in too much, it disappears. You have to respect that. You have to be humble about it. And you have to embrace the concept. Fade your eyes a little bit, peripheral vision, let it exist, let it feed you, work with it in a smarter way. Yeah, and there's been so many attempts to try to define it, but they're all failing miserably. So I pulled my hands from that.
I mean, just trying to write the description in the beginning for what you do, it took me a long time. And, on your site, you've done an attempt to kind of put some words in it, but you can tell that you don't want to, and that makes sense. But from the outside, what we see YouTube videos, don't we? And we see not only yours talking and moving, and they're amazing to watch, but I also see a lot of your students doing, I think you call basic practice, which are, it seems to me, a certain number of moves that are, to anyone untrained, very impressive to watch, yet very simple. And is that a way you use to kind of introduce people to what you do, or is that a good way of describing what you do?
Not really.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Yeah. It's not a basic practice. These are just basic patterns, specific basic patterns to the goal of getting stronger, for example. It's like one atom out of this whole cloud. And that's a choice that I made to collect these patterns and to put them together. They make sense to me, and I view them as very basic, linear ways to manipulate the body. But there is no basics to movement. Basics for what? What are you doing? You don't even know what you're doing. So how can you come up with basics for that? There is no basics. There is some basics that you choose for your kind of movement practice, your genuine, unique movement practice. And since people did not make that choice themselves, or were unwilling or unable, lack of knowledge, lack of whatever, I came up with some things and I introduce people to those things. But I still keep it very, very real, saying those are not basics of, everything. Those are just basics in relation to this practice, not to movement. Some movement practice. it's very easy to support people around the world in their quest to do, for example, strength training or mobility work. So we start there, and it creates something. And from there, you know, they're becoming stronger, they're becoming more mobile, and then we can start to play. And then we can start to move into more advanced stuff. And we meet them usually by that point in time in person, and we start some real stuff going. So the online thing is just this basic layer preparing you for some movements later on. It will not prepare you for everything, because there is no basics for everything.
Talk to me about the tribe aspect, you know, of Ido Portal. And is part of that influence from the capoeira background? But it sounds like all the magic happens when you get people together, because you really get people to improvise and feel and, you know, move without thinking about moving. Is that what you're trying to get people to do?
Yeah, it's a big part of it. Yeah, it's not the tribe of Ido Portal, it's the movement culture. It's a tribe of movement. It will exist without me and after me, and be, you know, in many ways it existed before me, but maybe I was there to shine some light and say, hey, we belong together. We are more similar than different. Dancer, BJJ guy, they share so many similarities, but they don't realize. So they sit in separate tables. And I was the person coming in and say, come. Going to the floor, have a look at these patterns. Hey, have a look. It's almost the same. It's almost the same. Yeah, the goal is different, but so many different learning opportunities here. So that's the movement culture, and that's the tribe that gathers around it. And it's definitely my capoeira background put a lot of put in my head like the importance of community and tribe and practicing together and sharing it together and collective knowledge, collective brains, collective everything, fashion. You know, it happens whether you like it or not. It starts, you know. Yeah, it's super important when you want to build something together. The personal practice is many times cannot lead very deep. We have collective knowledge. It's a huge jumping point. It's somebody who denies that. It's pretty hard to go deep these days. You have to embrace it. So as a culture, we produce body of knowledge and we research it together and we dive into it, we influence each other. And of course, some people are more, you know, in different points in this game, doing different roles, but without the culture, it's...
And everything you've built is built on collective knowledge.
Yes. Everything that anybody built, you know, I believe. There is very little new stuff these days, you know, genuinely new. Boom. Anything from spirituality to everything has been said in many ways, but not in the combinations that we are coming up with today. And, you know, like even the technologies are just like, yeah, you take this technology together, whoa. But really inventing the wheel again, it's a very hard thing to do.
You said that we're the original generalists, right? We're the generalists of all animals as humans. And yet so many of us go to specialize. And we accomplish so many great things as being specialists. But as a specialist, you almost rob yourself the beauty of being human. Am I kind of summarizing some of the things you say accurately that way?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. We started to value specialists. We were able to save lives. We were able to grow our population and do incredible things, creating incredible things, and because of specialists and specialization. So it became promoted. It became the right thing to do. You know what your mother wants you to do. You know, become a doctor.
Become a doctor, right?
Some specialist, some. And yeah, but we paid a certain price of living a more diverse, flexible, healthy life. You know, it's a little bit like also in movement, it's a very similar concept where many people come up to me and say, hey, you're training so many hours a day. I train 6, 8, 10 hours a day. So this is not healthy anymore, you're destroying your body. Well, if you look at it through the eyes of a specialist, definitely. If I'm doing BJJ for 8 hours a day, for sure. But the variety of practice that I do is so divided all across these joints and all across different qualities, softness, hardness, and complexity and simplicity, and all these things coming together, that it allows me to do a lot more and to live many different sensations, feelings, emotions, mind states. So this is the generalist perspective. And generalist may be a misleading word a little bit. It becomes, again, abused. And lately I've heard, I read a thesis by a dancer called Rasmus Olmeni. I really loved it. He sent it to me, and I really, really was influenced by what he was saying there. And he's basically talking about dancers, and he's saying, you know, nowadays to be a generalist dancer cannot be, doesn't exist, because there's so many types of dances. So what actually we became, and that corrected it in my mind, we became a fingerprint. From specialist to generalist to our own unique self, to our collection of things. Because we cannot be everything. It's not like I can be the hunter, the shaman, and the gatherer, and the builder. Now there is so many titles. You can't be everything, but you choose what you want to do, what you want to be. For example, you have a very unique combination of things. Yeah, you're interviewing people, but you're also doing all these weird other things that usually, traditionally, someone who does interviews, such a journalist, does not do. So that's a very unique fingerprint, Brian, bam. And that's what I'm moving towards with myself and with my students, is exposing them to a lot of general practices, but then saying one day, okay, it's time to choose.
Okay, so there is a choice to make.
There is a choice to make, because there is so much, there is too much. Collective knowledge is above and beyond what one person can take. But you'll be surprised at how much we can take still.
Right, okay. You talked about movement there. In the last year, can you remember that one day where you had, in your mind, the best day of movement for Ido Portal? And could you describe what that day was like? You know, you said there's soft movements, there's hard movements, there are movements that make you feel this way or feel that way. Could you walk me through what that day might look like?
I can definitely not remember one day, because there are many. And it's a point of mine to live as many such days. And definitely, I remember many such occasions, and it's all about awareness. Yeah, it's about being aware, being present, and still being, in many other ways, quiet and allowing, and it happens to you. Yeah. You know, Bruce Lee again. It does, it happens, it jumps, it hits, it moves, it's soft, it's hard. Yeah, and those are the best days. It's just this sensation, and all the time this calm happiness underlying this, knowing that everything will be okay. You know, you can't get injured in those days. It's very hard. You have to really do something extreme. You're aware, sensing, and yeah. And it's not about one thing. It's not about drinking a coffee, taking a stimulant, and lifting heavy weights, but you lose all of your sensitivity. Or your heartbeat is too high, you can't sit down and talk clearly. It's about being good in everything. It's about being in a 0 point that is the same distance from all these things around you. I'm exactly in the center that allows me to touch everything in a very accessible way. Yeah, because I had like very strong days. I had very mobile days. Sometimes the lazy days are very flexible days. The body is very flexible. But yeah, in a movement perspective, to be good in everything, it hints that you're standing in a neutral point.
And a day like that, will you go to the beach and do some movement? Will you go to the park and do some movement? Are you always moving? Are you always squatting or hanging? Or will you plan that day when you have 8 or 10 hours of movement? Like, where would you do that? Or do you always think, I'm going to have a ring and there's going to be some rings associated with that? Or how does that look?
I'm a lot outdoors because, first because I love to be outdoors, because it's a very movement promoting thing. And second, because I don't find a lot of good indoor supporting, inspiring places to practice movement. There are some better places, but nothing really perfect. Yeah, and it's every day. It's every day. I'm out there. You know, I don't even have, you know, like rest days. You know, I've had a rest day. 1984, you know, sometimes I tell my students, I don't really do any more rest days. It's like my rest days are still a lot of movement in some forms or another, but it's not a training session. It's not about like, you know, now I'm training, now I'm stopping. It's all throughout the day. So in the end of the day, you know, in front of the computer, working or whatever, I'll be on the floor, you know, with the computer between my legs, and I'll move around and I'll squat and I'll kneel and I'll change positions, and then, you know, I'll stand up and I feel my back a little bit, so I'll do some spinal waves or some movement and I'll mobilize certain areas. Just being aware of this, what I call the moved sensation, deprived of movement, you know? It's like, I'm hungry, I need to eat. But people are not realizing like, oh, I need to move now. Because if I don't move now, in a few more hours, it's going to become a problem. And in a few more years, it's going to become irreversible problem. So learning to recognize that and constantly shaking things up. And it takes a lot of time to build this awareness. You know, like maybe your back right now is screaming for certain movements, but you don't have the terminology yet, and you cannot recognize these sensations. Maybe your shoulder is calcifying as we speak, and you need to hang. You really need to hang, but you don't. Yeah, you have to develop you have to educate people about it.
Last time you were here, you looked around this place and you said, Brian, you need a place to hang. And I get really anxious if I don't train for, say, 48 hours. I mean, I can notice it in myself after so many years. I think when I was younger, I just didn't notice it, and I would just take it out emotionally on people. But a lot of people know that is, now I need to go to the gym for an hour and pay my personal trainer and then get back to work. Or maybe they even might play a game of football on the weekend and then go back to that position. You try to defeat that mentality, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to be that way. It's okay to do that, to live that, but it doesn't have to be that way. And I want to open people's eyes towards other alternatives. First, owning the body, taking responsibility. Stop handing the keys to someone else to drive that car around. Because ownership, you know, like buying the vehicle is part of ownership. If you cannot operate it, it's not really your car. You understand what I'm saying? If this car sits down there and you're waiting for your driver to take you around, it's like, you don't own the car. You might have paid for it. It's not yours. So the body is very similar to that, and we like to hand the keys and we don't have time for it and whatever. It's like, we can't afford that, and it's just, it creates so much suffering. It creates so many problems later down the path. And you're switching practices, and you know, you're getting older, you know, you're 30 or 40, now you have to switch your practices, because when I was 30 I did BJJ, but now my body, I'm 40, I need to do these different things, and when you're 50 you're doing yoga and this and that. And actually, you can always tailor yourself a perfect suit for yourself, fingerprint exactly what you want. But it takes education, it takes knowledge, and that's where you have to start. And it's not about doing a workout, you know, it's about living a physical lifestyle, respecting the body that you live in, constantly addressing it, being aware of it, just as much as we address the psyche. And there, it's very, very immediate. Like, I'm unhappy, something starts to happen here. But the body is constantly unhappy. And we ignore it, we shove another cheeseburger, you know, down the throat, and we don't move, and until it's way too late, you know. And some people do the same thing with the psychic, and you know, ignore signals and abuse, and yeah, the weekend warriors trying to resolve, you know, years and years of stuff with a single dosage because they don't want to devote the time to and the thinking to that problem. They just want a quick fix, a microwaved meal, but it's never the same quality. It's never the same thing, and it doesn't hit us. And yeah, by the time it does, it can be too late. And then you'll be praying for all gods in existence that you will receive back 10% of what you had. It's like a moment after, you know, it's...
When you look at the fitness industry, I mean, say in America, that's where I'm from, I always look over there first. Is that make you optimistic, or less so if you look at the way it's changed in the last couple of years? Are we going the opposite way of where we should when it comes to the way we look at physicality?
No, it makes me optimistic.
Okay.
Yeah. We are moving towards more movement, more and more movement. And yeah, sometimes we overdo it, we dive into certain things, but definitely we are moving towards more movement. People are moving more than before in the fitness industry. CrossFit, functional fitness, you know, MMA getting bigger, you know, white collar MMA. It's huge now. In Asia, you see a lot of it. This is good stuff. People are moving more instead of sitting on some pec deck machine, you know. Yeah, the calisthenics, the street workout, all the, you know, this urban gymnastics kind of phenomenon. It's great. People are moving more. It's not movement. It's just some movement, but it's better, and it's moving us towards that direction. And people need to climb up the ladder of memes to reach the higher meme. It's not, you cannot jump from global gym to movement. It's too much. It's overwhelming. You don't understand what the fuck does that guy, you know, even talking about. But when you go from global gym into some functional training, into some CrossFit training, into some gymnastics training, and then you're starting to see the similarities, and you're starting to see the bigger picture, and then you start to relate yourself with something like maybe a movement practice. And it's pretty hard to come up with a bigger dogma when it relates to the body. That's why I chose it.
Because it's the biggest one out there.
It's the biggest one out there.
Perfect Ito style. So tomorrow morning, I'm walking in, and I'm going to be in your seminar for 2 days. And in true Ito form, you sent me an email and you said, Brian, it's full days, it has challenging moments, and it's long hours. So if you do it all, no half-ass visits. And you made me smile with that. And, and I would expect nothing less. What can I expect to happen to me tomorrow? Is it, are you trying to shift my paradigm and make me just think differently? But I know it's also very intense. So without divulging, what should I expect?
Yeah, paradigm shift. You are familiar with some of the ideas, but it's about to put it into context, and that's very beneficial. Paradigm shift, meeting some demons, meeting some difficult moments, not too many. Some will come, some less. Meeting some injuries, discovering like, oh, there is a whole door here that is locked inside my house, like my right knee. Oh,
right. It's avoiding movement because it's worried about an injury, and that's changed the way I've moved my whole life. Or
man, that's more the kind of like that's a very common kind of chiropractor's kind of breakdown. But I'm talking more about you can't do whole layers. You cannot practice beautiful practices because certain things have been neglected. Yeah, it's not approachable. It's closed door. And like most people, they don't have all this back reality. That acrobats and capoeiristas have. This thing.
Right.
And I don't have fear from that.
Right.
I can go there. And this provides so many options. For example, in MMA, you see people like, you remember that moment where Rickson is being flipped over?
Yeah, we talked about that last time.
We
Pride fighting champions,
And you still see, nowadays, you see people like Conor McGregor, you see people, with a general better movement perspective and understanding, and the door is not locked. You want to flip me back there, no problem. It's familiar, it's known, and the options and the freedom that comes with it. And then the other side is realizing, oh, all this stuff is locked, and actually I'm missing a lot of freedom. I wasn't aware. So that is probably the thing. And there will be a lot of shifting mindsets. This is something I talk a lot. There is no one mindset. You're coming in to work hard, you'll be destroyed. You're coming in to be sensitive, soft, realizing things, you'll be destroyed. You need to be able to shift mindsets from moment to moment because the subjects are so diverse. I give you something, and by the time you get comfortable with this toy, I take it away and I put another toy in your hand. And that brings it into the higher umbrella. You have to jump into the higher layer, which is movement, the movement layer, and understanding, wow, it's so many things. One moment I'll request certain sensitivities and very isolated, fragmented thing, and another moment is like I push you and you have to do something really hard and the skin rips or whatever. And you have to be able to shift these mindsets because you're not a dancer, you're not a fighter, you're a mover. It's everything.
And you've worked on this process for many years and perfected it and seen the results and changed it around until it's something that works for you.
Yeah, improved it, perfected, not yet.
Tell me a bit about the people around you, you know, the close circle and then the bigger circle of the thousands of people that really spend their time learning, that fly around the world and go into your seminars. Like, what is the culture like?
A culture of hard workers, not a culture of talented people, first and foremost. Although many people would think from the outside, but they don't realize what goes into it, and they don't realize the starting point, and they don't realize how much hard work is there. We have a few talented people, but I don't need to take my shoes off to count them, really. A culture of very supportive community. Being stripped down into the beginner mindset so many times will do that to you. You're emphatic, you're supportive, you're helping others. Because you suck all the time, because the toys are being switched around. So you cannot, you never, you know, lay back on the laurels and, you know, I'm a black belt now. You know, I reached a black belt. Now, there is no black belt here. Every week is a different white belt. So you're just constantly being very humble in your approach. A culture of people who are not very young, but not very old. We have a huge following from the ages of 30 up to the age of 50. And we have also people in their 20s, and we have also people in their 60s, but yeah, there is a big following there. It's a certain maturity that I guess this climbing the ladder of memes and ideas and a certain maturity that comes about. Yeah, these are some of the characteristics.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of ethics. I educate a lot of people about being a student. What does it mean to be a student? And a lot of, this is martial art ethics. I grew up on it. It's very important for me, and I think it's valuable if you want to be pushed by someone to areas and you want to be helped by someone into areas that are completely concealed to you. So you have to lean back into it and allow that person to take you on a journey because you don't see where it's going. You have no idea, especially in a movement practice. You have no idea where it's going. So you have to trust, you have to respect and honor that. It's a gift that you can never return. You know, I can never return the gifts that I received from my teachers. It's something that would never be answered.
You told me last time, when you find a good teacher, then you should just learn from them regardless of what they have to teach you.
True. I believe in that. People don't like to hear it, but it's very true. And I've had this many times. Met people and, you know, maybe the knee-jerk reflex was like, I don't even want to learn this, but something about that person, something maybe it can be conceptualized into, oh, this person is so special, I admire him so much. He must know something more than what I'm seeing right now. So I'm going to go with what he has to teach me here. And I'm going to trust.
Do you get to meet those people anymore? I mean, you're running around the world teaching everybody. Everyone's looking to Ido. How can you ever find your teachers?
I make it a point. I go and seek new teachers, and I meet some of my old teachers, not all of them, but some of them I'm in good contact with. It's important to have teachers for me still. I travel all around the world and looking for pieces of information. Sometimes it's not about finding a teacher, it's about finding pieces of information through some person. But at other times, I'm more interested in finding teachers. It's rare, but it is more than just information. Yeah, there is the information brokers and there is the teachers, something else. It's not about, I don't just want the information that you have. I want wisdom. I want something else. You know, data, information, knowledge, wisdom. Okay, data I can find alone. I'll open my phone, you know. Information is a bit higher level already, certain filters on the data. And then you have knowledge, what you know. And then wisdom, how to act upon this knowledge, and, you know, and it's kind of, some of the definitions are intersecting.
You know, you've said something about information in the past, and on my TED Talk that I gave, I said research is procrastination in disguise. And you once said information is toxic and it's addictive. We run after it, we have this thirst for it, but at a certain point it turns on you, it paralyzes you and freezes you, and it doesn't allow you to apply and learn, and it's no longer a contributing factor for your development. Do you still believe?
Yeah, yeah. And more, the more time passes, the more I believe in that, because of this crazy era of misinformation.
To watch the rest of this fascinating interview, click on the link below and go to LondonRealAcademy.com. There you can sign in with your social media, log in and watch the rest of the episode for free, along with all of our episodes on London Real, my webinars, and all of our premium content, all located over at LondonRealAcademy.com. So click on the link below, you'll be directed there, and you can watch the rest of this fascinating interview, and I'll see you there.